Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. Thousands of people across the world have marked International Labour Day, some even defying government restrictions put in place to curb the spread of the coronavirus. In Greece, a rally was organised by the communist-affiliated group PAME, who used plastic red square markers on the ground as a guide to maintain social distancing. As witnessed across Europe, businesses there have been hurt by the nationwide lockdown imposed several weeks ago. Similar gatherings took place in the Austrian capital, Vienna. In Zurich, Switzerland, a protest against wages while adhering to lockdown measures. In Malaysia, a horn of support from ships docked at Port Klang to show solidarity with seafarers. In Hong Kong, anti-government protesters marked the holiday by showing support to businesses that openly support their pro-democracy movement, injecting much-needed funds into restaurants and cafes that are struggling due to the coronavirus. In China, tourists flocked to several beauty sites, including the Forbidden City in Beijing, which has just reopened to visitors for the first time in several months. Joe Biden, the Democratic contender in the upcoming US presidential elections, has denied the assault allegations made against him by his former staff assistant, Tara Reid. During an interview on the MSNBC program Morning Joe, Biden addressed the allegations publicly for the first time, saying the 1993 incident never happened. In a series of media interviews, Reid has accused the former vice president of pinning her against a wall and aggressively assaulting her.
I have complete respect for the whole Me Too movement. I have 4 daughters and 1 son, and there's a lot of excitement around the idea that women will be heard and be listened to. There is also due process, and the fact that Joe Biden is Joe Biden, there's been statements from his campaign, or not his campaign, but his former employees who ran his offices and the rest, that there was never any record of this. There was never any record, and that nobody ever came forward, or nobody ever came forward to say something about it apart from the principal involved. I am so proud. The happiest day for me this week was to support Joe Biden for President of the United States.
Meghan Markle, Britain's Duchess of Sussex, has lost the first stage in a legal battle against a tabloid newspaper after London's High Court ruled to strike out part of her privacy case. The Duchess is contesting articles written in February last year, which published the contents of a private letter to her estranged father. In a ruling on Friday, Justice Mark Warby agreed to strike out allegations that the publisher acted dishonestly by leaving out certain passages of the letter. Associated newspapers wholly deny the allegations. With the number of new coronavirus cases dwindling, Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has announced plans to restart sport across the country. Australia's National Rugby League, which was interrupted after 2 rounds, also said earlier this week it will resume a 20-round competition at the end of this month, pending government permission.
The principles today draw heavily on the Australian Institute of Sport's framework for rebooting sport in a COVID-19 environment, and they're quite detailed and they'll be circulated. Many of you will be probably familiar with those already. They do set out important principles that, for example, outdoor activities are a lower risk setting for COVID-19 transmission. A lot more of the risk is in indoor facilities, not just playing indoor, but indoor change rooms and things like that, and the mitigations you'd have to have in place to deal with that. It speaks of the need for community sport to be moving, not just elite sport. And now that may not be able to be completely synchronised, and you wouldn't have one necessarily hold up the other, but it's important that if people should be able to see the sport, but they should be able to play it as well.
And finally, a floating lifeline for those still struggling to access basic daily needs during a lockdown. The famous vegetable market at the iconic Dal Lake of India's northern Srinagar city has taken a new level of importance during the country's lockdown, as it has remained open when many of the businesses on land have been forced to shut. Even though social distancing is a challenge, this is still considered to be safer and even more convenient than other options. And that's your international news around the world in 5.